you're about to experience a new way to thrive in martial arts by exploring who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you believe in. It's time to rise, because this is where we challenge and say no to outdated industry norms and say yes to change, so that we create a healthier, happier, and thriving martial arts community. I'm your host, Laurien Tsuhake. Welcome to the Rise to Thrive podcast. In this third episode, we have the opportunity to learn from Emil Fitoussy. Emil is a striking coach in Sweden who applies ecological dynamic theories, especially the constraints-led approach, to striking training. Rather than traditional rote drills, his methodology emphasizes variable, game-based, representative tasks that allow athletes to adapt and self-organize their striking behavior under realistic constraints. If you practice striking or coach it, his work offers a different paradigm compared to the traditional approach. Emil is also a bachelor student at Linnaeus University, finishing up a degree in sports science, focusing on ecological dynamics in combat sports. Welcome, Emil. I'm so happy to have you on. And well, as you probably listened to last week, we had Till on. And afterwards, there was quite discussion somewhere regarding the pet work, whether it's useful or not at all. So let's dive right in. What are your thoughts on that?
I think pad work has a place, but the discussion isn't very, very nuanced or very, I want to say good. I don't think the conversation is good at all. There's so many different ways we can use pads. There are different number of pads to use. Usually when they say pad work, they mean the punching and the kicking pads. They don't discuss like belly pads or leg pads or anything like that. So the hand pads, to me, the kicking pads, the Thai style and the boxing style, they can serve a function, but I think there are a lot of better alternatives. The main problem is to use those pads, you're always going to have a person there to hold them. And when you have that person holding them, you might as well just interact with that person directly. They can put on a pair of gloves and you can play around with it, no matter like the physical constraints of the situation. You can use them for a workout, absolutely. That's really fun. But it's for skill building, for creating skill behavior. I don't see the benefit over the interaction between two human bodies.
So for you, it's also useful because it's fun. It's a workout in strength and conditioning, or would you even say, well, there are better strength and conditioning than two?
I would say there are better ways of strength and conditioning, because you can use a heavy bag, for example, that allows you to push a much higher tempo. The main problem with pad work is the initiative. You're always going to be waiting for the pad holder. I experimented with this because this was a thought I had. I was like, I don't really like pad work. What happens if I try this? And I told the pad work people who were holding pads that once in a while, just stop, just stand still, completely still, because I want to see what happens. And what ended up happening is the people who are punching, they just froze as well, because they're waiting for the permission to do something. But if you do that in sparring, if I just freeze, it's going to be a bad time. That it completely removes agency from the athlete. It breaks the ecology of striking, if you will, to me.
Can you explain that to our listeners? Because this is like the third episode in this coaching series, The Art of Coaching, where we really dive into constraints-led approach, but any contemporary approach to skill acquisition. Can you explain that a bit deeper?
Absolutely. This is just my thoughts and feelings of 15, 16 years in this sport. But there are three invariants, if you will. To me, they make up a single invariant. But anyway, there's position, the way we align our body over time. There is distance, that's the gap between us. And there's space, that is the playing area. So if we're in a cage, the cage is going to dictate how we can move. And these three things, to me, form what I call RingCraft. how we act in a fight. And these three things are not separable variables. They create a triad of action. We cannot remove them. So, for example, if we were to take pads, what we remove usually is distance, because we're not, or distance and space are really affected by it, because we have to kind of engage with the pad holder. We have to be very still standing. If the pad worker isn't moving, we're not moving. And that doesn't really reflect the true nature of the fight. A fight isn't a preset answers. It's a living problem that changes second by second. It's very, very dynamic, and compared to grappling, extremely chaotic, because we're not connected in any sort of way. There's nothing to control me doing what I want. That's where I find it so enjoyable as well.
So you would say that pet work on the scale of representativeness is just not representative at all, and there's also no specificity benefit.
I don't think so. And that might be controversial, because there are so many examples of people hitting pads over the years, and very good people hitting pads over the years. But I there's a great sketch of Kevin Hart imitating Floyd Mayweather when they're just hitting the pads all over, and that's a little bit how I feel about it. I think that anything you train and explore in that environment with pad work, you can do in a live environment. It's just a matter of intention and how you shape the environment around striking. To me, you can manipulate these three things: space, position, distance, space, and you can get different effects. You can make the environment able in sort of ways, more blockable, more punchable, more kickable, more clinchable. But with pad work, it's so forced. It's a false agency. I think it creates a false agency in the athletes.
So now that you mentioned these three pillars, so to speak, would you like to explore them a little bit further? Because we're those that are, I mean, I'm pretty sure there are also more people, coaches that are already well versed in this, but I think also for them, there's always something new to learn. And especially for the coaches that are new to this, they may not be very familiar with, the individual, they perceive the environment. Maybe you can we start really in the beginning and then how it relates to striking.
Absolutely. So, utilizing the framework of ecological dynamics or ecological psychology, we understand that affordances are opportunities for action. And these three things, or the RingCraft, but position, distance, and space, shapes that affordance landscape. It's how we act in that environment. We are trying to do something that means we're going to shape our body in a certain way. We're going to do it with someone, so the distance is going to be there, and we're going to do it in a confined area usually. If we were to do it in an open space, striking would be really, really boring. We have to kind of force that action in some sort of way. So we can see that this shapes what is possible, what the environment informs us of before it's even possible, before we even thrown a punch. A fight doesn't start when the punch is thrown. Usually, if you see high-level fighters, they're standing for a minute or two, or just acting and twitching and trying to make reads. And there is some scientific data on this, I think from the UFC, on what winning fighters are doing. And usually winning fighters are not engaging in the first round. They're reading, and they're perceiving essentially in the first round, and their actions increase over time. We can see that that's a winningable strategy, I guess, English. But I usually say this: the striking is a little bit like a conversation, and then RingCraft is the grammar of striking. It's what makes the rules, how we communicate, how the context is shaped. I think a lot of people take away one or several of these aspects, and then they're muting that language. They're destroying this emergent dialogue. They're trying to script it, but it's impossible. Like, if we're talking, we can't script how we're going to talk. It needs to be emergent. We need to talk and react and counter argue. I cannot make a script for how this podcast is going to go. I don't know what you're going to ask. You probably have a script that you're trying to follow, but maybe something pops up and you have to change to that. And that's the way I view striking. We have to act according to our opposition. And I think that's the problem where a lot of striking coaches don't really understand the game of striking, or they don't understand coaching design. They don't really understand what they're analyzing. So they are removing the really important aspects, and who knows? Maybe I'm completely wrong, but I don't think so.
Yeah, so give me examples. So we have these three pillars, so to speak. Maybe I understand about my dog Yuki keeping in the background because she feels neglected. So what would happen if you take one pillar out? Maybe you can give a very like a tangible example so that coaches that are new to this and they're like, okay, so maybe I'm doing it wrong, but then what should I reconsider?
Yes, absolutely. So imagine we're creating a goal where we say that you have to do X before you can do Y. You have to kick before you can punch. You have to throw a roundhouse kick before you're allowed to throw a rear hand. Anything like that. You're eliminating adaptive movement solutions. You're not allowing people to simply exist in the environment and pick up on the different affordances of the environment. When we manipulate distance, for example, we say that, oh, you can only engage when you're in this zone. You drop a circle or something and you have to step into the zone to engage. We're removing natural temporal information that specifies when action becomes available to us. So we're creating kind of a false environment essentially. And when we remove space, for example, when we put a spot on the floor, this is a really common one I've seen lately, or we put both our feet into a tire. This is I hate this so much. We strip away the spatial information of the engagement because we're constantly moving, we're constantly adjusting, and we're adjusting different parts of our bodies. This doesn't just mean our feet. This means our hands, our head. Everything is moving all the time. So when we remove that, we create this false sense of agency, and we become skillful in a very sterile environment. And I think I want to say Davids and colleagues that calls this a collapse of like ecological validity. I think it's the wording. We don't get that transfer that we want to have. We might get some transfer, but I think we can do it even better. We don't have to adjust what we learn out of context. We have to relearn in context. We can create it in context. Everything you're trying to do with these different over constraining or removal of it, we can do it in the live environment. We don't need anything other than a pair of gloves and a pair of shin pads maybe to keep ourselves safe. We can do this in the environment. I think that's the main point. Does that answer your question, or is that too long-winded?
No, no, I think it's great. I think indeed, like a very simple example that I've only competed twice in my own weight class. The rest was
Yeah.
always 15 kilo heavier. And so when I did compete against people my own weight, my game was not optimized for it. And so when there were moments where I could kind of still turn it around to win, the way how I did it is how it works for people that are bigger than me. So that way didn't do. And since I was lacking exposure in the environment with people that are my weight because they fight differently, I couldn't adapt quick enough in real time in the competition because of course everything is a bit harder, faster, overwhelming, all that. Um that was we were then already a bit busy definitely with COA, but I didn't have partners that were representative to the people I would be meeting. So that's, I think, another example for people to also think that even if you have COA, if you have people with a big size disparity, it will change what is available, what opportunities you have. So
Yeah, I have a wonderful example. A friend of mine brought up this example that was I like, oh, this is amazing. And he said, I think the most practiced thing for me is that rear roundhouse kick. You know, you're kicking the pads and everyone holds for it. But I think the least thrown strike I have in fights is the rear roundhouse, right? You're trying to do low kicks, you're trying to measure distance. You don't really throw in that sense that you throw on the pads, right? It doesn't carry over from the practice environment. And you can watch like Google whatever like Thai fighter you want and watch their pad work, and you're gonna see that rear kick so much. And then you watch their fights, and you're never gonna see it, at least not in the same frequency that you see in training. So we can already distill from that that training doesn't really carry over to a performance environment. But it's a great example. I empathize with your pain.
I'm not the only one. Um, yeah, that's a good thing. So you have for coaches some tips to check when there seems to be transfer and when not. So one would be we practice X, but we don't see it in Y. Um, do you have also some specific things that coaches can consider, whether that's for striking or for grappling?
I think one thing that a lot of coaches overlook in general, doesn't just mean in CLA or anything, is the agency and what the person is trying to do and want to do. I always give this example of how I learned that. When I started working at the former club I was at, there was a man there who was just a perfect like specimen for striking. He had long arm, long legs, very tall, not that heavyweight class. He had the great gas tank. He was, I think, like ex-military or something. So he was very, very a great athlete as well. And I was like, oh man, I'm gonna create the perfect like outside fighter. No one's gonna get close to this guy. He's gonna be so good. And no matter what we did, he would always just go inside and he would try to fight like Mike Tyson, essentially. And I was like, I can't do anything with this guy. And then one day I asked him, I was like, hey man, you don't really get inside much, huh? He's like, nah man, I just want to bang. It's like, what can I do? I can't do anything to change that. He wants to do this. He's always going to do this. No matter what we put him in, we're gonna put him in all these outside drills, all these outside games, and he's gonna do well there. But he wants to bang. He's gonna go inside and he's gonna fight them. So what can we do? We can't change someone who doesn't want to change. We have to work with the athletes where they are or and with what they want to do. And I think creating that autonomy is going to increase their motivation. It's going to increase their sense of coherence. We're going to get so many benefits out of there. So really, really, my best advice to coaches is ask your fighters, like, what are you trying to do? Why are you trying to do it? And what do you want to become with it? Ask them. It's a cooperative process, I guess.
Yeah, but I also think it's important to ask because you get feedback from them, but you can also they also then you also ask them to self-assess and you ask them to um, be independent thinkers as well. Because what I've noticed, we lost once one female student who at one point was like, "Yeah, there are many beginners. I want more advanced stuff." I'm like, "Yeah, but feel free, you can do that yourself. I'm happy to help where." But you are now at a level where I also expect you to dive into things that you want to do, that you like to do. And when we know that, we can cater you and help you. But there's also definitely some self study involved. And it was so fascinating to see that for this student, for her, that we weren't offering it on a silver platter and that we just didn't do all the thinking for her. But even if we did, because we had once a super fight for her, and I analyzed her opponent and I really analyzed it to a T. I knew exactly. And one thing that in this example she had to learn was the Kimura trap. And it
Mm.
didn't come easy to her, just the whole, concept around it. So she refused. And I was like, okay, you can do that. But then I also don't need to prepare you anymore because you're not playing ball. What can I do? So the match, she was dominating the whole 10 minutes, but it ended in a draw because it was submission only. She was all the time in side control, and all that she needed to do, indeed, was this Kimura trap stuff, because that was given all the time. And that was for me as a coach, I was like, I mean, I refused to be annoyed by it because I was like, yeah, I cannot force somebody who doesn't want. And even if I see things correctly, they indeed don't wanna, it's not gonna help. That said, from then that moment onwards, we also learned, okay, right from the start, we want to help our teammates with self autonomy in the sense that they from day one learn to also think for themselves. So we ask often questions like what they noticed, whether they think this was effective or not, and where they got stuck. Because when they do also part of that process, then they are so much more open to learning. When we also want to give some guidance, if the brain is not ready for it, we can say whatever, but it's not gonna stick. But when they realize that they have somewhere they have this roadblock and they are aware of that problem, that's when the solving starts. So yeah, I think this feedback self-assessment is just really very important. But also what you say, if somebody just want to bang, if somebody just wants to do those three things, yeah, there's not much you can do about it, no matter how good your skills are.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is also really important to kind of understand. It's a bit of a, I guess, Western idea, but a lot of people have gone through a school system that doesn't encourage exploration and doesn't encourage people to fail. Essentially, I work a lot with teenagers right now, and they feel a lot of pressure from school. They feel a lot of pressure with tests, with grades, and all that stuff. So they come into a space and they basically expect me as a teacher to provide them with information and tell them what to do. So they're almost shocked when I'm like, okay, here's the thing, go do it. You know, how am I going to do it? I don't know. I don't know how it's going to look. Try yourself. They respond really well to it. But to understand that the way we view learning is through teaching, but we know that teaching doesn't equal learning because we can have, I mean, I've gone through, what is it now, 20 years of school. There's a lot of stuff I forgot. Give me a math problem and you will never get an answer. Doesn't matter how basic it is, but ask me about this stuff and you're going to get some pretty detailed responses. And I think that's a huge problem, that the discourse around learning in general doesn't start with the learner. It basically just starts with them having to go through this system of producing and creating results. And as someone with ADHD who had a terrible time in school, I can tell you that it's gonna leave lasting effects on you. I still have a really hard time accepting teachers in school. Like, I am almost hostile towards them. I see them as an enemy, someone who's working against me. And I have tried, but I can't really change that, unfortunately. And it's a shame if people were to go through life with that idea.
But I don't think you're the only one. But I know, like Michel Foucault, for instance, compared schools with prison systems. That he's like, if you look at this at the system, it is like a prison. Especially back then, there's a gong. You have to stand when the teacher comes in. Back in the day, there was also some corporal punishment, but there was this idea, like criminals, kids were just like um, these rough diamonds that you need to shape. And when you were basically criminal or a child, well, you needed to be shaped, and that's what they did in those schools. That's why I think it was so top down, and indeed you only speak when spoken to, and they kind of like want to kind of open up your brain and put it put it all in, and somehow miraculously that has to make you something, and you still see it. I mean, like I started thriving only really in university when we were like, go do research. And we got tools, of course. We learned how to do it. Because in the beginning, the first year of history was really like just reproducing. We had to just kind of more or less go through, world history kind of in 1 year. I mean, of course, it's just only you can go so deep. That's why in later years you can choose your topics. But then once we had kind of like a basis of understanding of what happened in the world, and then we started to specialize more and we learned tools, how you do proper research, how do you, have a methodology, how do you, whatever, all this stuff. I started thriving because I could really do research. I could figure it out. And the other thing that really struck me was when I read the book from Carol Dweck about mindset, about fixed and growth mindset. She, in the beginning, she describes how the IQ test wasn't designed to see whether somebody was intelligent or stupid. It was designed to see which kids didn't thrive on a specific learning system. So it didn't say anything about where these kids were smart or not. It was about, does this learning system work for them? And if not, because they would score low, didn't mean they were stupid, just meant that they need a different system of learning. And that for me was like, because right now, when I think most people, when we talk or think about IQ tests, we just think, oh, like, oh, let's just see whether I'm smart or not, right? But not that it just should, that not testing whether this specific method of learning worked. And I hope that coaches, whether wherever, or teachers in whichever field we are at, whether it's university, high school, primary school, striking, grappling, check indeed does it transfer, but also like, do your people really get better? Are you telling them, or do you help them where to look? Do you help them to find where they can explore and learn the skills that they need in order to thrive in whatever it is that they want to thrive in?
Yeah, for sure, and to bring the same discussion over to sports and what we do. I think a lot of people are they view matches and competition in kind of the same way. They're trying to evaluate, do we win or do we lose, good or bad. But I mean, really, it's just a mark of where we are at that specific time, at that specific moment, at that specific environment. Like I recently went to the Figure It Out camp in Malaga in Spain, and had a great time. And I had prepared so well. I was like, oh, I'm gonna do a camp for this. I want to be in the best possible shape of my life going there. And then the week before, I got so sick. I was bedridden for a week. So, like, am I gonna evaluate myself? I would have probably done that 10 years ago. Evaluate my performance there based on what happened, because my body is not recovered and I'm feeling horrific? Or am I going to evaluate these 8 weeks and be like, oh, I didn't miss a single session. I went in there with intention. I was focused. I was driven. I was motivated. And it happened to lead to something, a shitty performance because of circumstances. And I think that is a real problem. And when I discuss with coaches about training, especially in striking, and especially here in Sweden, you often hear them like, yeah, but we won. And it's like, yeah, but it wasn't good. If we have two people who are really bad, one's gonna win anyway. If we have 100 people who are bad, one is still gonna win. So what are we evaluating actually? A result isn't just a result. It tells us something very specific about that moment.
I think that's really indeed a good point, because, and that's what I love so much about COA, is that it shifts from winning to losing to much more thinking, okay, this worked, why? This didn't work, why not? And that you're not so much looking like, oh, did I tap this person? Did I do this? No, and sometimes depending on the game you play, sometimes can be highly specific, where it's like really like a mini battle about a gray zone area, really, where you fight for, whether that's maybe position or distance, whatever. It can be arguably a small thing that maybe many wouldn't notice, but it's a very important fight. Um, that indeed that you start on like, okay, so how can I improve that, instead of, oh, did I punch this person in the face? Did I win this? Did I get this point? And that's what I like so much about COA, is because you can constantly get feedback, just information, without that you feel disheartened. Because for me, if I go with someone, like I already said, like I was in London, I trained with Indiana, eh, I can't, you know, like I did not get far, but every time I tried out something different. And each time when I lasted a few seconds more was for me a win. And so I think when we learn to distance ourselves like that, our performance, whether it's in training or in competition, doesn't say anything about our identity, our whole being. That's, I think, when the learning starts. But when you indeed have pads, drills, combinations that you drill, and that sort of stuff, then you kind of go in, play, push the play button, hope for the best, see what happens. But it's also hard to evaluate, because when you lose, yeah, why did you lose? Yeah, the combination didn't land. Yeah, why? Right? I think it's hard, because also for an athlete, it's then like, yeah, but I drilled this. I really drilled this. I showed up. I was on time. Like all these controllables, they did, and yeah, indeed didn't transfer. So, what are your thoughts on that? But also, what are your thoughts on combinations? because especially in striking, I mean, it was one of the first things I learned.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, in regards to like results and the effect of results, I spoke to a fighter from America some time ago, and when he lost his last fight, he lost because they hadn't trained clinching a lot, and he told his coach that like, oh, we didn't clinch, and he got almost an angry response, like, how dare you question like what we've done, and it was your fault. And he's like, come on, you're getting the response here. It's a conversation. You had a result. Let's analyze this. Let's move on. How do we build on this? Something was obviously missing, or he felt that something was missing. Maybe even more important, how he experienced that situation. How do we move on with that, and maybe introduce more cleansing, or am I seeing the sport wrong? This relationship between coach and athlete. What's happening here? But in regards to combinations, I think the way we talk about technique in grappling, we talk about specific things like kimura or outside heel hook or Peruvian necktie, whatever you want. It's the same way we kind of talk about combinations, like, oh, look at this combination, and this is the thing we're gonna do, 1 2, and this off balance them, and then we can kick, and then you watch a fight and it's like never more than 2 strikes in a row. It's again, it looks fantastic on the pads. It looks fantastic when you're demoing it against a non-resisting opponent. But in reality, we don't get that opportunity. It's very seldom we see someone land more than 3 or 4 punches, and even then, we don't really examine like the effect they were trying to have on an opponent. We A lot of sports, I think, suffer from a post constructive analysis. Something happens, we slow it down and we say, oh, look, this is what happened. And then we might interview someone afterwards and like, oh, what were you thinking? Nothing. There's so many examples of this in like football. When someone scores an amazing goal, it's like, oh, what were you going through your mind? Like, get the ball to the net. And we organized ourselves around that solution. So I think that's what ends up happening in the striking. Like, coaches unfortunately don't really understand. They don't question what is happening and why it's happening, or historically what system they have gone through, how tradition is affecting them. I mean, the reason why I'm talking about striking and not, for example, Muay Thai, is because Muay Thai is so culturally tied to a specific place. It's literally in the name. So anyone who comes from Thailand here to Sweden will have a hierarchical advantage over me, because of course they know it. They're from there. That's where the sport was invented. And then you ask like, oh, well, what education do they actually have to analyze this? What is their knowledge of and their knowledge about this? And that's usually an uncomfortable conversation for the people who are worshiping like Thailand as the mecca of striking. But I think there's a big reason why we don't see a lot of cross success to other sports like boxing or kickboxing or even MMA. Like, I think Luma Lokbumi is the only Thai UFC fighter. I don't think there's ever been a male UFC fighter, for example. And usually when they make that transition, people who have done historically really well in Muay Thai, they have to either change their whole game or they're not going to have much success, even in the striking aspects of MMA, because it changes. They are not necessarily good strikers as much as they are good Thai boxers. It's different rule sets, different affordances, different affordance landscapes, different intention behind what we're doing, right?
Yeah, I think a good example was like the difference with boxing and kickboxing, that with a hook, like a boxer can really turn in, but if there are kicks involved, you don't want to be that vulnerable. So indeed, that's like when you add kicks, it already looks very different.
Yeah, or you might be able to do it. That's also the thing where people get extreme to one end. There's like, oh, you can never do this, or you can always do this. Like, you can do it sometimes, sometimes not. If someone is completely off balance, they have no way to kicking you. Yeah, turn in that leg. No one cares. but you get stuck in that. You get stuck in that. Oh, you should always do this, or you should never do this, and it's like, can I do this? Yeah, probably. Try, see what happens. Especially if I'm not the one who having to suffer the results. Go ahead, try.
It is also the same class too. Like when people are like Alex, Lorraine, can I do this? I'm like, yeah, just see what happens.
Yeah. We had a fantastic example with the teenagers I'm working with so much right now. One of them, we were doing, I think, just a basic like kicking sparring thing, and one of them busts out this beautiful, the hug tornado it's called. It's a spinning heel kick to the leg, and it's absolutely beautiful, perfectly executed. And I was like, wow, that is so cool. And I asked him afterwards, yo, that spinning kick you landed, what's going on? Where did you learn that? He's like, I just thought it would be really cool if I span before I kicked. Like that's it. I was like, oh man, you're brilliant. Like, especially kids, they're gonna have so much. They're not bound by our imagination of what it has to be or how it has to look like. They will bring that childlike creativity to things, and you'll see stuff you never thought was possible.
Absolutely.
And would never fall into your own mind, right?
Yeah, yeah, because indeed, just the sole reason I thought it might look cool is a very valid reason to try, right? To try things out. Like the worst what can happen is that you realize, yeah, okay, it didn't work.
Yeah. No,
No harm.
I've had so many moments in grappling, because I started grappling fairly late in life, uh, where I done something really cool. It's like, wow, this is amazing. What did you do? I don't know. I tried to get on top and stay on top. Something cool ended up happening.
Yeah, but that we also see often in our classes that when I see cool stuff and when others ask them, they can't reproduce it because they don't know. It was indeed they perceived it. I remember once as a white belt, I had this moment that I was just sparring and I did this. We didn't learn that even yet, but I did this amazing back step and spun around and bam, I was in mount. I don't know. And we both were like, whoa, what did you do? And I also was like, I don't know. Somehow my body or something perceived it and I just did it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's unfortunately something that coaches kind of remove from people a lot of times, that explorational relationship. I think, I mean, one of the things I hold is rage against is this idea of offense and defense in striking. I don't believe in it, and I hear so many people talk about, oh, this is defense and this is offense, and oh shit, sorry.
Okay.
It was the alarm for the podcast. 1 hour late. No, but this idea of offense and defense, like my examples are always, if I, like, let's do a thought experiment here. I push kick you. Was I being offensive or defensive?
Well, I'm pushing, I don't know, maybe I came in, you're storming, maybe I wasn't doing anything, I don't know.
No, but it's a
I
pretty,
have
like, a
should have
lot
done
of
something. Should have done
yeah.
something that you want to push kick me away.
Yeah, a lot of people will say like, "Oh, that's offense. Like I'm striking you. That's offense." You throw a kick at me and I lift my leg and I block it. A lot of people would be like, "Oh, that's defense." But let's imagine you're throwing a roundhouse to me. I push kick you to defend it. Am I being offensive? Am I being defensive? Am I being defensively offensive? Am I being offensively defensive? And at this point, does it even matter? The way I view it is leading and countering. Everything we do in striking is going to be either a lead or a counter. You're either going to be first or you're not going to be first. And that's the easy way to look at it. And you can dissect that countering into different variations. Like there is a delayed counter, for example, the example we just gave, you kick, I block, and I kick back. There's something in between my attack and my scoring, or my effect, if you will. There's the simultaneous counter. You throw a jab, for example, and I intercept it, and I throw a punch over your jab. It's a fantastic way of scoring like heavy blows. You're leaving a very stable structure, if you will, to do something, and I counter that. There is action counters, which is something I've not heard anyone else kind of talk about, but to me, everything we do is an action, and every action can be countered. So the example I always give is, you want to jab me and you take a step in and I kick your leg when you're stepping. Traditionally not falls into offense defense, but I'm countering what you're trying to do. The other example is if you're stepping in to throw something and I just throw a jab just to measure distance and I just catch you really clean, that's going to be a really effective punch. But I wasn't necessarily trying to counter a specific punch. I just anticipated something. And I think when we analyze, especially striking through these lenses, we can start to allow people to explore a lot more, not getting stuck into the kick has to be this for this situation, or you have to do this before you do this. Rather, just here's the environment, here's how we shape it, here's the task, let's go. And the tasks for striking are actually really, really simple, and they've always been there. Hit, don't get hit. If you can do those things, you're going to be a fantastic striker. And if you want to analyze striking, if you want people to get better, make them better at those two things. Make them better at hitting people and make them better at not getting hit. And you have a fantastic base to, last your lifetime.
Yeah, which is cool because you kind of then override the offense defense. I mean, I was also what I always found very weird in the beginning, also when I did some striking, I'm like, how can I work defense if there's not an attack? Like, it's weird to me. Like now with grappling, I really cannot. If somebody's not doing anything to me, I don't move because nothing is happening. I really can't drill anymore. And I also already got blamed from some other people that they're like, you ruined it for me. So if they're listening, sorry, but not sorry. And so what I was at the camp and we were just doing some half guard sweep. And this coach added like progressive resistance, something I find really dumb because, and probably I will just piss off many people also for saying this, but the thing is, if you want one specific outcome, one technique you want me to apply, and all you're saying is that your partner is allowed to use more force, you just get in this tunnel vision where you just try to enforce it. It has nothing to do with skill anymore. So what happened in my case was it was a some sort of sweep from half guard that I have to kind of load her on me and then I can kind of do a backwards roll-ish and then I flip her over. So what my partner did though, she just sat back, which was actually a very good response. She wasn't aware of it, but yeah, she just did not want me, of course, to sweep her. So without realizing it, she did the right thing for this particular specific solution is that when she sits back, I cannot load her on my gravity, my point of turning, and I cannot do it. But I also knew she was very competitive, so I just then tried to sweep her backwards because I'm like, see what happens. So of course she didn't want that either. So bam, she comes forward. I could lift her. I could do that specific thing, but I could only do that because I understood what is needed, what kind of reactions I need in order to do that specific thing. I mean, look, in these kind of more old school classes, I kind of always try to make my partner a bit competitive because usually then they start to, for me, it's a great training. I will say this, but that was for me the only way to get this specific sweep done without trying to enforce everything. I had to somehow, she had to come in. So if that coach would have said, top player, because it was like, yeah, you don't want to get swept. No, say that you want to not want to get swept, but you still want to go forward. Maybe let them pass. Try to pass, because then you would create so many more opportunities for this type of sweep. But she just goes sitting backwards, completely killed it, which I loved because I was like, yeah, that's nothing more to say. But of course, then I had to problem solve that. But that's like also like indeed with striking, I'm kind of like, you need. If not, why do I need to block anything, or why do I need to do anything if it's not going to be anything?
Yeah,
Just
for sure.
reminds me of this one scene in Dragon Ball, like when Trunks come and he just comes with his sword, and like Goku didn't flinch. He's like, why didn't you flinch? Like, yeah, I knew you wouldn't do anything. Yeah, that's the thing. Why would he do anything? And that's for me. But what drilling is like, yeah, why would I do anything if there's not a threat, nothing is happening.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that love the Dragon Ball Z reference. My God, that's fantastic. No, but we need to understand like precursors behavior. What needs to happen for something to happen, and as coaches, we need to analyze history. We need to kind of look at what has happened in the past for people to start doing this, and also analyze our classes to understand like why, what creates what behavior in what people, because all those situations are different. Different people in different environments will create different outcomes. So like we want to create a pressure fighter, we need to give them that opportunity to experience pressure, or to be able to create pressure. We need to give them an understanding of what pressure is. Why are we doing this? What are we trying to achieve? Like that understanding of the sport is severely missing. I think jiu-jitsu and grappling and MMA are doing a much better job at it than striking in general. I think seeing good grapplers is less rare than seeing good strikers. Obviously, striking is extremely chaotic. It doesn't matter how good you are. You know, Bob Sapp beat Ernesto Hoost. That's insane. You would never see that in grappling. But we need to understand what we want to do, why we want to do it, when we want to do it, and how. You know, meh. Let them take care of that. Let them sort that out. Just put them in a situation, create very clear task goals with a clear intention, and just, inshallah, something good will happen.
Yeah, God wills it. So, for our listeners, could you give them some pointers on when they're new and they would like to design a practice?
Absolutely. The thing I sorry. The thing I always try to tell people is the classic Rob Gray one. It doesn't really matter what we do right now; it's where we go from there. But I always advise them to start with like a fairly basic situation. It might be one of the things we always do with the teenagers as like a warm-up round is a classic. We call it offense defense. I just said I don't believe in it, but it's a great way to kind of shape it. One person is going first, one person is only allowed to go second. It's a really like basic warm-up round. Let's go 3 minutes, change partners a couple of times, and we'll see like, okay, where are we today? How are they feeling? What is happening in this room at this moment? And usually you might have something, an information with you from a past week, but you can use that information to be like, okay, let's explore this opportunity, or let's put them in this situation. Okay, one of you, imagine there's a magnet in your back and there's a magnet in the wall, so you're getting sucked towards the wall. Then they're going to experience like, oh, why don't I want to be stuck against the wall? Oh, because it sucks. It's going to be very limiting to what you can do. But allow them to experience and have that opportunity to experience I guess, a learning opportunity and different affordances that exists in the environment against a very variable opposition. We're looking for that variable functionality, the degeneracy. We want to be able to kick, a tall person, a short person, a fast person, a strong person, a fat person, a thin person, all these different things. That's what skill is, right? Being able to produce something. Pick a situation and then try. Honestly, that's the best advice I can give you. Try something and go from there, and be open to changing your mind. I mean, if you're listening to this, if you made it this far, you might have heard me on the combat learning 2 years ago now, and it sounded completely different in the way I'm talking about it, because I've just started to explore striking and I'm trying to apply this, and no one else is doing it, so I don't really have anyone to talk to. Now I'm more experienced. I've seen how this works. I've evolved the way I view things, and I understand the literature a lot more. I've been able to engage with that a lot more. I put in the work, as certain man always says you have to do, to understand it better. And you always have to be that. You have to be open-minded to change. You have to be able to change your practice if you're not getting what you want. And let the literature guide you, but don't let it, don't get stuck in it, because we can only research, and we can only tell what we have already researched. But you might be, about to discover something completely new that hasn't been discovered or researched yet. So, try. Try is always my best advice to people, even if it's uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think that is the thing. Like for us, also, like when we started reading, many books were not even written yet, so we had really like just articles, and there wasn't really like. I mean, you're not studying it. I mean, from a friend, I could get I could get the PDFs and stuff, but still, like there were so many vocabulary and stuff that I was like, oh my god, jargon that we first had to learn, and that's now so much easier. What I usually say to coaches is that everything what happens in your class is your fault, whether it's epic stuff, whether it's shit, it's all your fault. So it also means that because I heard some people say, yeah, I tried COA for a few weeks, but didn't work. And I'm like, well, maybe you didn't cue well enough. Maybe you didn't constrain him well enough. Maybe you didn't. And so for me, it's kind of like when something doesn't work in my training room, I know it's on me because I know they're hard workers, they're well willing, this kind of stuff. So when I see that as the constant and something is not working, it means I did not constrain it or create a well enough environment for them to explore a specific thing. And sometimes I have something in my mind, I think it's brilliant, then I play it out and it doesn't work at all. And so I know I need to go back to the lab and alter it. But also, what I say to coaches, tell your people this. I mean, each time when I have something completely new, I said, guys, we're gonna try something out. I don't know whether it works, but we'll see. And the cool thing is then also my teammates, they also give feedback when they realize. So together we figure it out, and that doesn't harm my authority at all. If anything, they just like it much more because they're really part of the process. They are also contributing something instead of just this top down stuff. So that's also something that I often say is like, if it doesn't work, it's maybe uncomfortable to hear, but then it's just probably you and not them.
Yeah, there are two things to that. I think that I don't think it's incomprehensible that maybe we're not good at what we do. I've been pretty terrible at a lot of things that I'm now good at. I'm a pretty good cook. I wasn't when I started out. I could only fry like an egg in the beginning, and I've learned over 31 years to be a better chef. So I don't think it's incomprehensible to make that assumption that maybe we don't really understand what's going on in this situation, and maybe people that have been good are not good anymore. Sport evolves. If we look at basketball for 50 years ago, it's terrible. Imagine them in today's game; they wouldn't stand a chance, right?
Same with tennis. It looks in slow motion. When you look all tennis matches, it is as if they go in slow motion. When you compare it to now, it's like you can't compare it.
Yeah, look, it's striking as well. Like, look at boxing when they started to kind of regulate it, and boxing it stopped being pugilism and it started becoming boxing. When you see those first clips of like James Corbet, I think his name is, it's awful. It's awful. Like I would whoop that man, but I wouldn't stand a chance against an Alexander Usyk of today. We evolve over time, so I don't think that don't get stuck in the idea that you're like, oh, I know everything and I'm the best at this. And you might suck, and enough time hasn't passed that you have realized that yet. It's be humble to that idea. And the other thing is, I think honesty is always like the best option, especially in coaching. Don't if It's easy to assume this position and be like, oh, this is how it works, and this is I'm the conveyor of the correct information, I am the lord of this room. But it's also really simple to be like, hey guys, I'm trying I'm trying my best, and I'm working so hard, and please tell me if it's not working. I'm trying for you. If you guys in the room weren't here, I wouldn't have a job, I wouldn't be here. So give me that feedback. Let's do this together. We are social creatures. We want that togetherness. So be honest with what you're trying to do and what you're trying to achieve with people. Don't hide things from them. And I think it's always just be honest with people. I appreciate it a lot when people just tell me like, hey, I think this is terrible. Great, now I know.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You don't take it personally because you know that what they're saying is that it's feedback on a specific thing that you did, but it doesn't say anything about you as a person. And I think that's what's for many coaches just so difficult to separate. It's like because also now, like I was training last week with a teen. I mean, dude, he's 16 years old. That's what 2 years already, lifting 6 days a week and calisthenics. This boy, his strength. I mean, it's inspirational. But I mean, he's a white belt, almost close to his blue. But I mean, it's not easy to beat him. because he can just like put my arm wherever he wants. And go, oh wow, I find myself in a triangle, no matter what I had last week. I really tried to pin his strong arm, and as I tried to pin it, he just put my arm up, poof, and then he said to me, "Oh, but I thought you gave it so that I could practice my triangles for competition." And I was like, I wish. But the thing is, he doesn't respect me any less for it. Like we have fun, but also he gives me good feedback because then he said, "Yeah, I started then problem solving because I'm like, if I can't beat him strength wise, so I have to move differently. So I started to block different things so he couldn't get the right angle, all this stuff. So in the end, he didn't get his triangles anymore. And then he's like, yeah, yeah, I sensed there it was better. You were better there, and da 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 da. I'm not upset by it. That a quote unquote how some people see a mere white belt would. Why? He's doing good stuff. I need to work to prevent him from doing that good stuff. But then if he gives me feedback, I'm so happy for it. It doesn't mean that I'm shit. I mean, maybe I am, but also that is okay. And I think that so many coaches, I ask often coaches, like, when is the last time you tapped? And then there's always a very awkward silence. And that's another thing I love about COA is that Alex and I, we tap all the time because if you constrain a game well enough, a white belt is definitely going to tap a black belt. It's going to happen. And when that happens, people are not so bent on winning at all costs anymore because it happens every class anyways, goes back and forth, this and that and at different stages. I mean, I let a beginner go super far, and then I just see like, can I still save it? Sometimes yes, sometimes also no, I can't, and I have to tap. So I learned something. So I think for coaches, in order to be honest and humble, I think they also need to swallow most likely some pride in the sense that they need to lead by example that being tapped is totally okay. Because when you say, no, no, tapping is fine, but you yourself never tap, or even if you get tapped or close to being tapped, all of a sudden you go berserk. I've seen that also happen often. Your actions don't match your words. And I think for effective coaching and for trust and connection, they need to know that you're also honest about, towards yourself, kind of.
Yeah, for sure. And I also think like when you engage with people, over time you kind of realize who are trying to actually engage with you, who are interested, and who are just trying to like be disruptive, especially in this space. Like it's so much fun to talk, and listen to this space where people are actually interested in CLA and ecological dynamics, and not just trying to be like, oh, what is ecological dynamics? No, that's not work. I'm so tired of them. When your questions don't have question marks, like the discussion
That's
isn't going to be very good. I've invented this thing, like I call it the NVA, the nonverbal approach. If people don't want to listen to me, I don't talk. I think my words are limited. I'm not going to waste them on people who don't want to listen. So when people ask me like this, like the podcast, hey, do you want to come on and talk? Yeah, for sure, absolutely. People are interested in listening. But if someone want to discuss, like, are you calling it a drill or are you calling it whatever, I don't care. Do your own thing.
That's also why I really wanted this series, and I also spoke with Greg about it. I'm like, I want to transition from does it work to, how do we get it to work then? Like, let's then dive into it because it's clear it is work. I mean, it's working in my view. I mean, but we never look back, and it seems more and more and more people are having a similar experience. So I also got I really stopped listening to many where it was again about more traditionalist versus contemporary approaches to skill acquisition because I was so bored. And indeed, you don't get to go deeper into it. Like, what is then missing in striking? Like, also, what do you say? Like, there's a anticipation countering. It's about offense, defense. It's about whatever. Like, that is already so much more valuable to dive into it versus, oh, does it work for striking?
Yeah, for
So
sure. Like it was really nice to be able to be in Malaga and meet a lot of coaches, meeting someone like Francisco Fonte who's interested in this and asks like good questions. Uh, I struggle with that a fair amount here in Sweden, where the understanding and the striking level isn't that high. When you meet people who are you're trying to discuss striking, and it usually just ends up with me sitting in the corner being like, I can't tell you what I actually think of your practice because we're probably not gonna be friends after that, and especially if we're talking about like the environment culturally that it created, it's not even gonna be a bigger issue. But just in training in general, it's so nice to be able to talk with people who are legitimately interested in how you communicate. I have a friend here in Sweden who's a researcher at Lund University. We're doing a webinar fairly soon together, and just when I get to talk to him for the first time, it's like, oh my god, you're a researcher at a high-end university in Stockholm or in Sweden, and you're interested in me, soon to be bachelor degree student. Because I have that experience in sports, that it's easy to have that academic knowledge, but to have that applied knowledge is something completely different. So I think that's something that I'm trying to do a little bit here in Sweden. I want to bridge that gap between academia and sports, because that's a really important relationship.
Absolutely, and I think that's why we are also behind because of that gap. And we also still have to sign up. We will question: will there be a replay? Because we probably are teaching at that time the seminar, the workshop you will have with him.
Ah, okay. What a shame.
Will there be a replay? Or
I will try to record it. I'll be very honest, we haven't planned that much. We're meeting next week to really plan it out, but I will try to record it and get it to people who might not have the chance to be a part of it. I also understand that time zones can create problems with that, so I'm gonna do my best to get it out to people, but I cannot guarantee anything at the moment,
all right. Well,
unfortunately.
in the show notes, I will add the information that they know whom to email so that they can get access to it if they can make it and all that. So I'll make sure to get it in. So thank you for that. And yeah, again, it's this gap that is just so important. The same with history, really, that you had historians crying why journalists would get the bestsellers on a historical topic where they're like, yeah, and it didn't even do the research right and blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, but they write in an accessible way. It's exciting to read it. It's fun, versus how many historians can write rather boring. Sorry, like I refuse that, and I also got some really big discussions with my supervisors and professors that they're like, yeah, but I want you to write more academically. I'm like, yeah, but then it's not accessible. And I think it's the same with this because again, the jargon in ecological psychology, dynamics, it is not easy. And I mean, even if you think of, I don't know, invariance or this and that, there's also a lot of discussion what it exactly is. Like, we don't know. Like, even there, it's not just a simple definition. Um, so I think what makes you stand out is indeed you have practice, you have applied it, and that's indeed what you need, especially when you want to spread it more amongst the public. You need actually in that regard ambassadors like you. So I'm very happy that he found you, and that you guys will be having a cool workshop, and fingers crossed that we will be part of it. That said, we're kind of getting at the end. Do you still have something where you feel like it is important for striking coaches to know when it comes to applying COA?
It's really not something that pops into mind. I'll probably rant on Instagram on something about something next week when I remember it. But I think, well, allowing people to really explore, make yourself as little part of the environment as possible, the least amount of information for the most amount of bang for the buck. I think that's always the problem. I think the question you should ask yourself is like, how little do people need to start exploring, and kind of trust that process. Like, allow people to really explore. It might look messy, it might look like really bad in your opinion, but just give it time and allow people to just exist in a cool environment, a cool culture, and good things will happen. You need to trust that process and trust in yourself. If you think you're doing something good, like, go with your gut and see what happens. Either way, you're gonna get a result. So take that result and go from there. It doesn't matter what we do now; it's what we do next, right?
Well said. I love that. Thank you so much, Emil, for this episode. And to the listeners, if you have any questions or something is unclear, please reach out to me or to Emil directly. We really want to keep the conversation going so that we indeed don't only have knowledge of, but also knowledge about. So please feel free to reach out. And then for now, Emil, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Emil, for shedding light on a heavily debated and often still widely misunderstood topic. For the listeners, I will add the information regarding the online workshop with Emil and Patric Nordbeck in the show notes. Next week, we are joined by Adam Singer and Scott Seafried, who will further explore why CLA is a harder sell to striking coaches and much more. For now, take care. Until next time.